Hey, what's up guys? Tim here, and in this After Effects tutorial, I'm going to be showing you guys how to do this. So, for this example, I just sort of imagine this as being some kind of tech review perhaps, but you can really get creative with this. So, let's show you how to do it. So in After Effects, I've pretty much just set up a few folders that I'm going to be using. So one for comps, one for media, and I have my 3 pieces of footage. But because I don't actually have footage, I've kind of just used just placeholders that I'll be doing. Okay, so I've got all my footage ready. So the first thing what I'll do is get the transition footage that I'll be using. It's best that you have around at least 5 seconds of the footage that you'll be using during the transition. So I'm going to drag this and make a new composition out of it. And this is around 5 seconds long. And all it is just a still shot of the mouse. You pretty much have the composition set up already. Make sure it's 5 seconds long. Ensure your frame rate's consistent and your resolution's the highest. As high as it can go. I'll just rename the composition to glass transition real quick, and then I'm gonna go ahead and add in those other 2 footages to the timeline. So for footage A, just want to use 1 second of it, and footage B around 3 seconds, and that has like 2 seconds of whatever. So at this point, it should look like footage A, and then it cuts to the transition footage, then cut to footage B. So now that we've pretty much sketched in the timing, let's go ahead and start animating all this. So what I'll do is go ahead and grab the transition footage at the top. Let me just rename this real quick to transition footage, so it's not as confusing. So now it's at the top, and then the next thing is we're gonna go ahead and create a mask for this layer. So click on the layer, click on the rectangle tool, and let's make a mask. Around that big's pretty good. I'm going to hit V, and then while holding the control or command if you're on Mac, wait a second, let me just get those mask pointers on. Control, command, and I just want to get those 2 points, and then shift, click and drag. Oh, nope, that's not it. Click and then shift, sorry, and then we're gonna go ahead and slant it a little bit. We're gonna click on the mask again, and we're just gonna make sure that there's a lot of space for the mask, so make sure there's no black, it's not cropping the footage, and there's a bit of room that you can use. So this is looking pretty good already. So the next thing we're going to do is start animating this mask. So we're going to go ahead and add in some keyframes. So if we go to the mask and hit the timer for a keyframe on the path, we're going to start the animation around half a second in. We're going to add another keyframe, or we can just drag it. It'll automatically make a keyframe. So it'll look like that. Pretty simple. So then we're going to go to around 2 3/4. We're gonna add a keyframe there, and we're gonna end it around 3.5 seconds, and we're gonna drag it out. So it's a little bit longer than the first one. So it should look like this. Cool. Now there is a little bit of black happening there. Don't worry about that. We're just gonna leave it like that. We're gonna fix that in a bit. So the next thing we're gonna do is add some easing to that animation, so it's gonna kind of be a little bit smoother rather than just a straight up, linear wipe. So we're gonna add some ease to that. So if we select all the keyframes and hit F9, you're gonna get this like little hourglass looking keyframe, and that's what we want. And that's gonna add some ease into the keyframes, and we want to make a few changes. So highlight the first 2, and let's go into the graph editor, and make sure you're in the edit speed graph for this. So if we zoom in, and we want to change the shape of this parabola. So what we can do is, we want the mask to slide in really fast, but then ease really slowly to a pause. So it's really smooth. So I'll show you what I mean. So I've changed the shape of it slightly. And it's not as linear before, so it's a lot smoother for the last two frames. But I kind of want the opposite to happen. So it starts off slow and then speeds up at the end. Just like that. I'm going to go ahead and save this just so we don't lose our work. Or you can hit Control or Command S. Okay, so after we've sort of refined that animation a little bit, we're going to go ahead and pre-compose that transition footage. But we want to leave all the attributes in the composition. So just make sure Leave All Attributes is checked. And we're going to just call this just transition footage again, because it's not much different. Transition footage slide, leave all attributes. So we still have the animations happening. Cool, that's what we want. Now if we go inside that composition, we still have this base footage. We're going to go ahead and pre-compose this again. And we're just going to call this transition footage. And we'll just move all attributes. Now we can play around with this layer, and then when we go back, we can change this footage to whatever we want in the future for any other future projects. So we don't have to touch this. So the next thing we'll do is we're going to add a little bit of animation to this. So there's a little bit of depth. So it's not just a simple slide. There's a lot more going to be that's going to happen. So let's go ahead and do that. First thing I'm going to do is add some scale. So to around 110%. And I'm going to go to half a second in. And with the position hitting P, I'm going to add a keyframe. And then I'm going to go all the way to 1.5 seconds and add another keyframe there. If I go back to this first one, I'm going to drag this back. So it's like, so it kind of just moves in just like that. So then I'm going to go to 2 3/4 seconds in. So around 2 seconds and 18 frames. I'll add another keyframe. And then around 3:12, animate it like that. So it kind of goes in, then it goes out, just like that. Again, we're going to add some ease. So F9. And we're going to add some ease. So the same kind of style we're going through in the first composition. Sort of wanted to do something like that. Let me make this bigger so you guys can see. Cool. Just make this one a little bit faster. There you go. Cool. Next thing I'm going to do is add some text. Just to say, hey, we're going to talk about the features next. This could be anything really, but for this example, I'm going to add features. And I'm going to drag this to the half-second mark. And where do I want it to be mostly? That position's pretty good. So what I'll do here now is hit P and keyframe its position as well. And we're going to go all the way to 1 second and 3/4 the way in and add another keyframe. And then I'm going to go back to this one and move it back to around here where that S aligns with the end of that mouse. Align with this keyframe here. Add another keyframe and then add around 3 at this keyframe as well. Add another keyframe, and this one's gonna slide out just like that. So let's take a look at that. It looks really bad right now, but this is when the easing comes in and it's gonna look a lot better. So if we do the same thing to this one as well, Now the next thing, we're going to add a little bit more animation to the text. You notice how after it slides in, it sort of just stays there. So what we want to do is add just some subtle movement. We're just going to add a little bit more depth with this animation. So we're going to go ahead and pre-compose this text. So we'll call it transition text. Move all attributes. And then we're going to hit P, keyframe, and all the way to the end. And we're just going to move it slightly around there. And if we go back to the first keyframe, we'll move it back as well. So then the net movement is all that. So I'll just preview it from here. I might actually make that a bit more obvious because it's a bit hard to see actually. So I'm using the arrows to make some minor movements. The arrow keys, I mean. Alright, cool. Alright, let's check that out again. There you go. You see that? The movement's there. It's subtle, but I think that's adds a little bit to it. Now it does sort of appear out of nowhere, so I'll add a quick transition animation. So opacity, drag it forward just a little bit, and bring the opacity all the way down. So kind of just doesn't just appear out of nowhere, but okay. If we go back to our main animation, let's check how that looks like. Now you could stop here if you wanted to, but we still have to add that glass effect, which I'm about to show you now. So the next thing we do now is we're going to pre-compose all these layers. I just need to cut this out. So Control-Shift-D, just get rid of this excess time. Do the same thing here as well. Have that match. Do the same thing, pre-compose, main transition, hit OK. Duplicate this layer, so Control-D, and we're just gonna alter the look of this one slightly. So we're gonna add some scale to it. So scale 200%. We're gonna add a brightness effect. To about 50. With contrast of -90. And we're gonna add some blur as well. Fast blur. Fast blur of about 15. Next thing we're gonna do is sort of add that the actual sliding glass that we see in the example that I showed. So what we'll do is add a new solid and make sure it's white. It needs to be white, and we're just gonna call this glass wipe. And to save time, we're gonna go back into one of the compositions. They're the same thing at the moment. We're just gonna go into one of them. We're gonna grab this mask. So if we hit M on the transition footage, hit Control on the mask, copy it, Control C, go back to glass transitions, and paste that mask in. And we're gonna go ahead and remove all these keyframes. And we're also going to adjust the size of this mask. So if we drag it to the center for now, just want to adjust the size of this. So let's see. So drag this in the middle. Something around this size is pretty good. Now we're going to go ahead and animate that mask sliding in. So if we add a keyframe, oh, there's already a keyframe there. And then we're going to go to 1 second in. We're just going to drag it just like that. And then going to go back and drag it to the beginning. Make a few adjustments. Slight shape, something around that like that. Let's see how that looks. Cool. Now what we want to do is we sort of want to hide. If I decrease the opacity, we want to cover use the white to cover that seam that we see. See where it cuts between the mouse and footage A? So we sort of want to hide that seam. So right now it's covering it for the most part, but then it sort of goes too fast. So what I might do is go back into this composition and maybe slow this one down a little bit. Let's add maybe to 6 frames in. 1 second and 6 frames in. How does that look? Making sure that there's no black. Alright, let's go back to the glass transition. If I look at the frames, yep, it's hiding the seam, so that's pretty good. Let's play it back. Let me use a 3rd resolution. Okay, that's looking right. We might need to make a few more adjustments later, but it looks pretty good for now. So I'm going to bring the opacity back up again, and I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to make this wipe start at around 2 seconds and 3/4 in, so around 2 and 18 frames. So if I solo these 2 layers, it's literally just these 2 wipes happening, and that's it. Now I just need to double check that this second wipe is also covering the seam of that second wipe as well. So let's go ahead and check that. It looks like it is. That one's gone a bit too fast, so I'll just go into this one, but I'll use the graph editor. Let's see. What was the problem here? So it wasn't quick enough. Let's see. The best thing that you want is that the wipe pretty much stays at the halfway point of it as much as you can. If you can get that, that's really good. So now that we have those 2 glass wipes, we're going to pre-compose those 2 together. Let me just unsolo these layers. Pre-compose, and I'm going to call this glass wipe alpha. Now I'm going to go to this middle layer, the one that I applied the scale to, so 200%. I'm going to toggle switches and set the track matte to alpha matte. So it's going to use the information that's white and then sort of use that as a mask. So only everything that was white, only that will show. So if I hide this layer, you can kind of see this sort of magnification effect. So next thing we're going to do is sort of style the look of that glass. We're going to add a shadow to it. So if we right click that, we'll rename it so we don't get confused. We'll call it the actual glass wipe, and we'll add a drop shadow. So right click it and go to layer styles and hit drop shadow. If we go down to drop shadow, we'll just change the size to around 50. I think 150 is good. Yeah, 150. What I'll also do is go back into the main transition, go into the transition footage where we have the text, and what I'll do is add some motion blur to this text. If I toggle switches, tick this motion blur icon as well as this one, and you start seeing some motion blur. So if I zoom in here, so if we go back to this layer here, there's a little bit of motion blur, so that's good. So the last step is we're going to add an adjustment layer, and we're just going to add motion blur to the whole thing. So motion blur, and then in our effects and presets, we're going to use CC Force motion blur. I'm going to change the motion samples to 15 and shutter angle to 45. And if we preview our effect, we get a little bit of motion on that glass wipe. So here you go, guys. The glass transition's done. From here you can really get creative with what you can do with this kind of transition now. You can sort of mess with the brightness of the glass, the speed of anything. You can also add some effects to the base footage. So remember when I pre-composed that footage back, notice how this footage is pretty much untouched because we pre-composed it. We can do anything we want with this footage, and then all the animations are applied on top of that. So we could get crazy. So for example, let's say I want to add some outlines to this mouse. If I duplicate this, find edges, invert it, and let's take out the saturation because I want to control what colors get seen. So remove the saturation. We're going to apply a tint effect. Make that kind of this like neon blue kind of color. I'll just get some levels and increase the contrast a little bit. Just really bring out the brighter areas and really hide most of the details. Now if we pre-compose that, call it mouse lines, and we're gonna add a mask to this layer. Doesn't have to be perfect. Now if we set the feathering to around 20, set the screen, toggle switches, set the blending mode to screen, and we get this really cool effect. And you can add some glow to that. Yeah, you can really get creative with this. And because we've pre-composed that, we don't really have to do any additional animation because the animations are already there. But yeah, hope you found this helpful. Thanks guys. Thanks for watching.